Hey loves, how are you? We're on day 16 of Inner Union, and I'm a little bit later than normal getting here today, but there's a reason for that. One, I was busy with clients today, but also there's been so many topics coming in, but none of them are fully landing. So I feel like I'm just supposed to open up and see what's going to be the most beneficial messages for you right here in this moment for our collective here on the channel. I know that there's a lot more to this Inner Union series, and I've also become very clear that even after this 22 days of Inner Union is completed on December 22nd, there is going to be a lot more content on this channel around inner union, around unity consciousness, and around really truly dropping into who we are and loving ourselves and why inner union is so incredibly important. Yes, it's for ourselves and it's for a counterpart or a partnership, but this is going so significantly far beyond that. It literally is a key piece of unity consciousness on our planet. When we come into self acceptance, right? When we drop into accepting all of the parts of ourselves, even the parts that we don't like or that we wanted to run from, or maybe we didn't feel so hot about, when we can embrace and work with those parts of ourselves and extract the value and the lessons from what we've learned from those scenarios, we can start to understand that we're human and that we don't always do things perfect, and that's okay. It's really about the process of learning and allowing ourselves to own what we've done or the experiences that we've had, understanding that you can't know what you don't know till you know it, that we're doing the best that we can within each moment, every person. That's not to say that we're not capable of doing more or doing better. Of course we are. But in those specific moments, we are doing our best because if we could do better, we would. But they're also there to support us in that energy of growing and self acceptance and self mastery. And as we do that for ourselves, again, then we can hold that space with others. So I was guided to pull out the True Love deck and let's just see what comes through. I've been noticing that there's been a lot of different topics on the channel. So let's see what happens. We have self respect that came out. And this is such an important piece of what I've been seeing in your questions and your comments that have been really standing out to me in when we talk about divine feminine surrender. And I know that that kind of triggers some people into thinking that means to go into a submissive state and just do whatever you're told. That is not the kind of divine feminine surrender I'm speaking about in any way, shape, or form. True divine feminine surrender is in a self respecting, self loving state, in the surrendering to her own higher power, not trying to control outer circumstances, not being in a manipulative energy, not partaking in toxicity, not allowing herself to be disrespected or controlled in the name of anyone for any reason. Okay. But a learning how to drop into self respect, no longer self betraying in any way, shape, or form for anyone. Okay. And I want to hone in on this because I know that there has been some confusion around feeling or mistaking that if there's a divine counterpart or a twin flame, and that surrender means surrendering to the masculine in the connection. Perhaps it's truly about surrendering to your own inner divine masculine energy and essence, or the higher power of the divine masculine energies. If you are connected with a masculine in the physical world and he is not moving, acting, being, or doing from divine masculine energies, then he's still in a state of his healing process and he needs space to go through that. So as divine feminine surrenders to the higher power, and sets her standards around what she truly wants and deserves, because she starts self-respecting and showing up for herself in those ways. Now that gives the masculine a template to understand how he needs to show up if he wants to connect with divine feminine in the future. Okay, there is a difference. We're not talking about surrendering to the old woundings and the old toxic patterns. Okay, it's surrendering that it is what it is, but that doesn't mean you have to participate in it. Okay, it's not your job to fix the part that isn't yours to fix. It's your job to drop into self-respecting, self-loving boundaries and energies. Okay, replacing the triangle of victim, abuser, and rescuer, and replacing it with your own inner triangle of self-love, healthy boundaries, and personal responsibility. Okay, this is completely different, because then you are taking that energy of projecting it outward onto anyone else. You are bringing it back home to you and your heart and your truth. You're not playing a victim. You are learning to love yourself. You're not engaging with abusers or as an abuser, because you're being personally responsible to yourself, or you're setting healthy boundaries for yourself, right? And you're not needing anyone to rescue you, because you're showing up for yourself with the personal responsibility and healthy boundaries. You see what I mean? You now extract yourself from the codependent dynamics, and you embody into a state of inner union through self-love, personal responsibility, and healthy boundaries. And I know I spoke to the feminines, but this, yes, of course, this goes for the masculines too, because I have equally seen masculines in an energy where they are overgiving and over providing. And in some cases, masculines are very good at setting boundaries in certain topics and in certain ways. But I have also seen topics and places and spaces where masculines have allowed themselves to overgive, or to move into a space of needing to be the hero or the rescuer in situations, which equally puts them in a state of lack. Okay, because if you look at the old dynamic of the victim, rescuer, abuser, what happens is that triangulation moves. And what happens is everybody in that triangle feels like a victim. Everybody tries to feel like a rescuer, and everyone tries to feel like, I said, the victim, abuser. Everyone starts to project in and of themselves within that triangle. But when we take it back to ourself and our self-respect and our self-responsibility, instead of needing to fix or project or judge or blame, we redirect it back to ourselves. This is not to say that other people not treating you appropriate is okay. Of course, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is the only thing you get to have control over is yourself. And that is your number one responsibility. So if you are in a situation that is not supportive to your highest good, that is putting you in a state of codependence or victimhood, I encourage you to take a step back from that, shore up your boundaries, and truly drop into discovering what it is that you want, what it is that you're willing to participate in or not, and then allow yourself to adjust your energies accordingly. This is for masculines and feminines alike, okay? I started out with the divine feminine surrender part because we did that video on the channel. And I'm glad actually that this came up, because I did want to speak about it, but I wasn't sure which avenue it was going to go down, because there's so much around this. This is such a deep topic. I could do a video in and of itself just for that, because there's so many layers to this process as we are learning to set these new boundaries in healthy, self-respecting ways for ourselves. It's not to say that you haven't respected yourself, But the truth of the matter is that when we get into intimate partnerships and dynamics, they are just completely different than just your ordinary type of connection or relationship. So sometimes we learn how to self-respect or to set boundaries with family, with coworkers, with friends, with neighbors, okay? But it hits a different pocket when you go into a romantic or intimate type of connection because you're opening up different parts of yourself in whole new entirely ways. And if you're going into an intimate physical sexual connection, you're now opening yourself in exchanging energies and DNA at the deepest, most intimate possible way. And you're literally taking in one another's information, one another's DNA. It is a very, very deep energetic process that's occurring. And so learning how to shore up your own energies and really dropping into what is important for you is a key piece in being able to shore up your own energetic boundaries and truly deciding what, who, where, and why that you want in your energetic space and what you actually want to participate with. Okay. This is for those who it resonates with. If this is not resonating, take it for what it is and let it go. Okay. Do what feels right for you, loves. I'm not here to be the inner union police. I'm here to share a perspective to support you in expanding on what you already know, or to say, you know what, I'm not feeling that, Danielle. That's okay. Do what you're guided to do all day, every day. I am always, always going to encourage you to do that. Your own inner trust, your own inner truth should override all else. Okay? You just take what feels right, do the rest. And the resolving conflict. So this is bringing it back to what's coming to me is about resolving conflicts internally before you approach them externally. And what I mean by this is it's layered, okay? We're in an energetic experience, a dynamic with another person or people. A conflict arises. One or both parties are triggered. If you happen to be the person whom is triggered, okay, before you attempt to resolve this conflict while you're triggered, I encourage you to do the self-respecting thing, to take a step back and allow yourself the space to process and take responsibility for your own trigger first. Because in the old types of dynamics, a trigger comes up, we want to resolve it because of course it doesn't feel good. Okay. And so we start trying to resolve it with the other person. And then the conflict starts to go back and forth like a tug of war because this conflict has arisen between both parties because they both had a trigger or a need within them that is not being met for some reason. Now, if they're both coming from this state, or even one of them, there's no possible way the other person can fill that hole. And in truth, it's not really their immediate responsibility. Okay. No one else is capable of filling you or making you happy. Others are there to support you and to add to the level of love and happiness you're already generating within yourself. Okay. But they're also offering an opportunity for you to discover and decide, what is this mirror? What is this trigger that's happening with me? Yes, I might not like what that person just did. And yes, it might not be appropriate. And I will address that with them later after I resolve what this has triggered in me. Because, like I've talked about in the past, usually it's not only that one thing that is triggering you. Oftentimes, it's a long-standing pattern of a trigger that has happened to you over and over again in maybe different scenarios. It could even be something that's in your system from an ancestral pattern where you see people in your family also experiencing these same types of triggers. Okay. And then we don't necessarily in those moments have the tools to resolve them because we've never learned them and we've never dropped them in. However, if you take the space to step back and say, I'm going to take responsibility for my part of this trigger. I'm going to calm myself. I'm going to neutralize it, even if it takes a couple days. One of the things I suggest to do in this state is to go get yourself some paper or go in your car, whatever you need to do, and allow yourself to process the anger, the hurt, the frustration, uncensored by yourself. Because the trigger is all of the old pent up emotion that's been there from days, years, generations, eons, who knows? Okay. So you allow and hold yourself in a space of allowing yourself to purge and process those initial uncomfortable emotions. Let them come out of you, let them purge uncensored on paper. Sometimes I go get in my car, I get on the highway, and I yell it out. I let it process out with a higher prayer that whatever I'm processing, I'm only intending to clear it out of my cells and recycle it back to source so that I can actually address the initial conflict coming from a place of conflict resolution, so that I can drop into the space and the energy of what is actually truly bothering me and not bringing a whole baggage of my past baggage to the table that we're trying to sift through that actually has nothing to do with the other person sitting on the other side of the table in that moment. It is not their responsibility to process my past baggage. That's my responsibility. Okay. After you take that time, it might take a couple days, a couple weeks. It does not matter how long it takes. You give yourself the space to process the uncensored stuff so that when you are ready, you can actually sit down and have a genuine conversation about what's really going on in these actual dynamics versus bringing all of the baggage from all of the things that have ever happened to you in your trauma space to this table. Because that's like two people trying to sift through a lifetime of hairballs together. Okay. It's not going to work. And I can attest to this because I've done it. I've done both sides of this. And I promise you, allowing yourself to process yourself uncensored is significantly more productive and healthy than trying to do it with someone else who's equally as triggered in their own hairball of stuff as well. Okay? There you have it. I hope this was helpful. It feels very important. And clearly, this is a topic that is up in the systems, okay? And as we learn how to hold space for our own triggers, right? Then we're in a space to hold a different reaction when someone is triggered with us. I often get asked this question: why is it that this person can show up for me and support me 50, 60, 75% of the time? But then we get into this argument about our relationship or our connection or a conversation around it, and they just go out the window. They can't handle it. They can't support it. We end up in this big conflict. There is a huge difference, and I'm going to tell you what is happening to my understanding. That person is able to show up for you when you're talking about a topic that either does not concern them, so they're not directly involved, or they have resolved this issue within their own triggers. Okay. So since they've resolved it for themselves, they're going to be able to show up for you and understand it and say, hey, I get it. Let's talk it out. I understand where you're coming from. I've been there. Or it's just not something that's ever been a trigger for them, so they can see it from a different perspective. Now, when we get into these conflicts moments, what is happening is both parties are in a state of trigger and in a situation that neither of them has internally resolved. Okay. And so then it becomes like a tennis match in a game of tug of war because each party is attempting to get their needs met because they haven't learned how to do that for themselves yet. Okay. This if it's looked at in the proper perspective, can also be very effective and a very powerful opportunity to take responsibility for your part in a self-respecting and mutually respecting way by taking responsibility for your part and allowing them to choose to do with what is theirs. Okay. They may go and also equally process and come back to the table and you resolve the conflict. You may work on your part and they may say, you know what? It's all you. And they might project and they might not work on it. And that's okay too. Because if that's the choice that they make, now you know where you stand. And now you know what boundaries to put into place for yourself. Okay. And healthy boundaries isn't saying you can't treat me like that. Healthy boundaries is saying, if you treat me like that, I am going to exit and I'm no longer going to be available for this conversation. You set up something tangible so that they know what your boundary is, and then you follow through on it. Okay, loves? All right. This is a lot. And I really am actually grateful that we're getting into this because these are topics and situations that are happening on a daily basis in the collective. Okay. I'm going to pull one more just to kind of round it out. It's coming from a place of compassion and empathy for yourself first, with respect to the other person. And then once you've held that space for yourself, you can approach the person in an entirely new way. Okay. And then you just, without expectation, you share your perspective, and then depending on how they respond is how you choose to move forward. If they're open and willing to work with you through a conflict resolution, you keep moving forward. If they are not ready, you take a step back and you give them more space. Okay? Tell me what you think. How do you feel about this? Do you want some more information around these types of things? Do you have some scenarios that you would like some support with? The sacred woman came up. And to me, I'm not going to read this just as the feminine. I'm going to read it for the masculine and feminine because I've talked about this before. And when we talk about divine feminine and divine masculine, to me, the sacred woman or sacred masculine energy is about us being able to embody our higher divine essences into our physical human body, being able to master experiences like this and embody that strength. And what I mean by this mastery, and I think this is a very important key piece, mastery is not about the fact that you're never going to feel any triggers. It's not about the fact that you're not going to feel the emotions or the experiences. That's just part of being a human being on this planet. We are emotional beings, okay? It's part of why we chose to come here to explore the emotions, okay? But it is about the mastery part comes in with realizing, okay, hold up, I'm triggered. This doesn't feel right. Something doesn't feel right. I don't even know what it is. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's coming up, but maybe I want to think it's like this old situation or it's bringing up these old memories in me. And I'm not quite sure if that's exactly what it is or not, but I know something doesn't feel right. And so I'm going to step back into my sacred energies for myself. I'm going to stabilize and center myself in what is true for me. Okay. What do I know is actually truth? What are the facts that I can ground into for myself without projecting onto the other person? Okay. And it takes space and time to do that sometimes. But as you allow yourself this process of learning and listening to yourself for yourself, it will become significantly easier to communicate what you're actually experiencing with the other person without the old toxic projection energy. Okay. Also, with that said, if it happens while you're going through this process and you catch yourself, learn from it. Learn from it. That's all we can do. Nobody is perfect all of the time. Okay. There might be a time where you get triggered and you come out in a way that you wish you hadn't. So sit with it, take personal responsibility for it, and then address that with the person as well. Own your part, take personal responsibility for it if you feel like you made a mistake or that you could have done better. It's okay. I feel like the important part is that you're learning it and that you're acknowledging it and that you're taking responsibility for your piece. Okay. It's all good. You can't know what you don't know till you know it. I'm going to say it because we're here and we're learning every day. And for those of you who are brave enough to show up and allow yourself to do something different and unravel out of these old patterns and reflect back into the inner space and come into this inner union. You see how, as you take that space to come into your own inner union, now you can replace it and go into an outer relationship and bring that inner dynamic to the table. And now you actually have the ability and capacity to hold that conversation because you took the time to resolve it inside of you first. Maybe it's not the complete resolution for the relationship or the connection, but you took responsibility for your part. And to me, that is about as sacred as it can get because your part is all that's your responsibility. What everyone else chooses and how they choose to respond to it is their responsibility. Okay, loves? All right. That's a lot. It's deep for a Saturday night, but I'm excited and happy that we got to kind of air this conversation out. And I love you. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your evening and your weekend. And for some reason, I'm kind of wondering that maybe there's some things going on that are in the process of being resolved where this information is going to be beneficial for some of you. And I'm hoping that that is the case. All right, loves, I will see you tomorrow for day 17, and I'm looking forward to what comes through then. Take care. Bye.